Hello everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. So one of the more interesting things to happen last year was the fact that I ended up eating my own words when I said that a Snyder Cut of Justice League didn't exist, because look at that, it actually exists. Now granted, they actually had to do some additional filming in order to make the movie actually exist in its entirety, but all things considered, my words on saying that the Snyder Cut doesn't exist and that he's only trolling people was proven wrong, and hey, what do you know? I still think the movie's gonna be hot garbage, but before we get to that 4-hour movie, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look back at Snyder's other DC movies and the theatrical version of Justice League. Watchmen, released in 2009, based off the graphic novel of the same name written by Alan Moore. The movie takes place in 1985, but it's more of an alternate 1985. I mean, granted, costume heroes don't exist in the real world, but what I mean by alternate 1985 is the fact that Richard Nixon is still president, and he's been president for more than 2 terms, and hasn't resigned from office after his Watergate scandal. Anyway, this is a world where superheroes have been outlawed. There was this long-running group called the Minutemen, whose team members eventually faded out, and then came in this new group called the Watchmen, but they have been proven to be very ineffective, so eventually they've been outlawed. Costumed heroes are now illegal, and the movie opens up with the murder of one of the retired heroes. And one of the former members of the Watchmen, Rorschach, played by Earle Haley, starts investigating this murder, and basically it leads him to a giant plan that could really alter the future of this revisionist world. So I actually saw this movie back in theaters when it came out in 2009. It was after The Dark Knight was a monumental success, and really helped change the comic book genre forever in terms of movies. That and Iron Man. And Watchmen I was kind of interested to see because it's a darker comic book movie, much like with The Dark Knight, so it could be very interesting. And I watched it. I thought it was okay, mainly because I didn't really understand a whole lot of the movie. I wasn't too familiar with the source material itself. But then as time went on, I just never really gave the movie a second thought. And with my opinion on Snyder's DC movies afterwards, I just didn't really have a strong urgency to rewatch Watchmen. But since I'm doing these reviews in prep for his cut of Justice League, I thought it would be interesting to revisit Watchmen. And I gotta say, I actually like this movie quite a bit. I won't say I love it, I can't say it's a masterpiece at all, but there's definitely a lot in this movie to admire. Now, I just started reading the graphic novel for the first time this year. I finished issue 1, and part of my curiosity to read the graphic novel was not because I was reviewing this movie, but more because the graphic novel is considered to be one of the greatest works in comic books. People have said it's a very mature story. It's one of the first comic books to be taught in college courses. So the book has definitely had a really good history, and I'm actually glad that I'm only 1 issue into it, because I don't have to turn to the whole in the book they do this and in the movie they do this sort of critique, because I think it's fair that I judge the movie for what it is. And I'm reviewing the theatrical cut for 2 reasons. A, it was the only version available on HBO Max, and B, considering that I'm in the minority of people that thinks the 3-hour cut of Batman vs. Superman is worse than the theatrical cut, I didn't want to take the risk and watch a longer version of a movie that I thought was okay when I first saw it. And like I said earlier, I thought this movie was actually pretty decent. One of the things I always thought about Zack Snyder is that he might be better off as a director of photography than an actual director, because a lot of shots in this movie are so well framed. It has a great visual look to it. Now, I said I wouldn't be comparing the graphic novel to the movie, but since I rewatched this right after reading the first issue of the book, I actually thought the look of this movie and the way the story was told at first really captured what I was reading in those pages, even though some of the stuff is not actually beat for beat what I imagined. And speaking of the story itself, I thought it was pretty easy to follow, and definitely a good story. It has a great mystery to it, and I was never bored. For the movie almost being 3 hours, like it clocks in, I think, 2 hours and 40 minutes, maybe a little more. There was never a point in this movie where I thought it dragged. I thought it was very, very well paced. And for most of the time, it's just a great movie to look at. And there were a handful of people in this movie that I thought were really good. The best one in this movie is Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach. Even though he's pretty much doing a cross between a 1930s Private Eye and Christian Bale's Batman, I thought he was intimidating. The voice actually worked for the type of character he was, and for his face being hidden behind a mask throughout most of the movie, I thought you got a lot of emotion and personality from Rorschach. I thought Patrick Wilson was really good as Night Owl, even though I didn't think that character was completely fleshed out. Apparently there's some stuff that happens in the book that isn't addressed in this cut of the film. Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays the comedian, and he's such an asshole in this movie. I mean, he's good as an actor, but the comedian in this movie is just such a dick. Since this character is killed off at the beginning of the movie, most of the development is done through flashbacks, and through these flashbacks we see that he's assassinated John F. Kennedy, he kills pregnant women in Vietnam, he almost raped one of the original costumed heroes back when they were the Minutemen, and he's just an unlikable shithead. Which I don't know how it plays out in the book, but in terms of the movie itself, it made me wonder, why was I supposed to feel sympathy for this guy? Like, he's such a horrible monster. And there are parts of the movies asking me to feel sorry for him, and I'm just like, no, he's done too many things to make me feel sorry for this guy. Who I do feel sorry for, though, is Dr. Manhattan, played by Billy Crudup. I thought Dr. Manhattan was just a fascinating character to watch. He's probably, next to Rorschach, the most interesting character in the movie, even if Billy Crudup's performance is kind of very calm. But you can forgive that with a character like Dr. Manhattan. And when they do his backstory and how he became Dr. Manhattan, I thought it was really interesting. It worked as a really great short film, and you do feel a lot of the pain that this character went through. Although my one problem with the flashback scene is that the actress they got to play his scientist girlfriend, I really didn't buy into the fact that she was a scientist. But that's really a nitpick, considering that she's not in the movie for very long. Matthew Goode was okay as Ozymandias, but the big problem I had with him is that he kept switching between several different accents. Or maybe it was just two, but it was confusing on why he did that, and it just at first gave me the impression that this guy can't act because he can't decide what accent he wants to use. Now, that being said, despite the fact that Matthew Goode keeps switching between accents at a confusing rate, he gives an Oscar-caliber performance next to Malin Åkerman, who I thought was the only person in this movie who was awful. She plays Laurie Jupiter, or the second Silk Spectre, and I thought she was so flat. The way she delivers her dialogue is just so monotone and uninteresting. Like, she was really awful in this movie. Now, that being said, there is one scene in this movie where I legitimately thought she was good. It's the scene where she's having dinner with Night Owl 2, and I thought the two of them had a small conversation where they felt like real people, and Malin Åkerman in that one moment was good. But again, throughout the rest of the movie, I thought she was very dull and just terrible all around. Now, unfortunately, this is where I have to segue into the bad stuff, because there's a lot in this movie that I really dislike. One of the things that just distracted me to no end were the song choices. And this has always been a problem with Zack Snyder, in my opinion, where the songs that he picks for his movies are way too on the nose and come across as unintentionally funny. In the opening credits, you have Bob Dylan's "The Times They Are A-Changing" playing throughout the entire sequence. And there's a point in that sequence where we get to the lyrics, "Oh, senators, congressmen, please heed the call." And this moment happens when two criminals are tied up to a fire hydrant. But as those lyrics are playing, the lighting on the fire hydrant, or the top of it, makes it look like the top of the US Capitol building. That's too much. That's too on the nose. There's the sex scene between Night Owl and Silk Spectre, where you have Leonard Cohen's "Hallelujah" playing in the background. Or, no, not in the background. It's in the foreground, on full display. And it really doesn't help when, at the same time Night Owl 2 is about to finish, Silk Spectre pushes on the flamethrower button, and then we get I'm sorry, it's hilarious. Silk Spectre pushes the flamethrower button in the ship, and then we cut to outside where the flamethrower is just going whoosh, and I'm like, wow, you couldn't be more on the nose than that. I'm not done criticizing the song selections yet, but that's another problem with the movie. I feel like Zack Snyder, whenever he makes his movies, he is so determined to push an R rating as much as possible that it's just so gratuitous and over the top. Like, the sex scene is gratuitous, but I thought some of the more violent moments were just so exaggerated, with bones breaking and blood splurting all over the place. And to be honest, I thought the movie's story itself and its themes were enough to warrant an R rating, and the violence was just, again, it's too much, it's too goofy. But getting back to the songs, the one that everyone loves to make fun of is when Ozymandias is talking to a bunch of oil tycoons, and in the background you can hear "Everybody Wants to Rule the World." And it really is so unnecessary. It's faint, but when you hear it, you instantly get the impression that, oh, Ozymandias is going to be the bad guy. You might as well have had Zack Snyder come out with a cardboard sign pointing to Ozymandias and saying, "Bad guy, bad guy." And then there's the funeral scene for the comedian where Simon and Garfunkel start playing. And the song that they start playing is "The Sound of Silence." If you're not too familiar with that name, just type into YouTube "Sad Ben Affleck," and the song that's used in that meme will tell you all you need to know. As soon as that song started playing, I laughed hard. Because again, we live in an era where that song is used to make fun of sad situations. It's a meme by this point. And to watch it play out in a very serious scene is just hilarious. And then also there's the fact that the funeral scene doesn't work the more you find out about the comedian as a character. There are some other issues with the movie that I don't think are worth going in depth with as much. I thought there was a lot of bad dialogue in this movie, and it's not so much the dialogue itself, but more like the way it's delivered, mainly from Malin Åkerman. Some of the old age makeup and the wigs are atrocious. When you see the old age makeup for Richard Nixon, it's not that appealing. When you see the old age makeup for Silk Spectre, the original one, it's just half-assed. The only thing I can say in its defense is that it doesn't look like it came out of Jackass like the old age makeup in Prometheus. Now, the one thing that people have had debates about with this movie is the ending, because even though I'm still reading the book, I do know about the ending and how Zack Snyder radically changed it. Some people loved it, some people hate it. I'm middle of the road. And the original ending, where there's this giant squid-like monster that comes out of nowhere, it seems kind of stupid. Maybe the context of why that squid monster is there will make it better. So instead, Zack Snyder changed the ending to where a bomb just pretty much goes off in the middle of New York City, and Dr. Manhattan is to blame for it. And it's a little more, I don't want to say subtle, because Zack Snyder really doesn't know what subtle means. I guess the concept of just a nuke at New York City is more acceptable and less over the top and out of nowhere. But at the same time, what I read in the book is that the giant squid monster is not blamed on Dr. Manhattan. Like, it's something that happens to get the nations of the world to unite. In the movie, Richard Nixon delivers an address that the US and Soviet Union will unite against Dr. Manhattan, which doesn't make any sense considering that we've seen Dr. Manhattan be a tool of the United States. I mean, we saw him in the Vietnam War. They've praised the fact that he's American, so it's kind of hard to believe that the Soviet Union would just willingly join the United States to fight one of their own. But I will tell you one thing in the movie that made me laugh that I don't think was really necessary to change was Rorschach's death. Now, the idea of Rorschach asking Dr. Manhattan to kill him makes sense because Rorschach's not going to go along with this plan, and the only way to keep Rorschach from telling the truth is if he dies. So Dr. Manhattan kills him, but the only thing that ruins it is that you have Patrick Wilson's Night Owl 2 watching this death happen right before his eyes and goes, "No!" And I think the thing that really makes that moment funny is the way Patrick Wilson delivers it. It's like, "No!" Oh well. Sorry, I mean, again, I've read the ending, I've looked up the ending to the book, and it just works better when he's not watching. Again, I'm going to read the entire thing for context sake, but for this movie, It's too funny. Rorschach's death was just hilarious. So based on this review, it sounds like I've bashed this movie more than I've praised it. And yeah, that's true that the negatives seem like they outweigh the positives, but I actually like this movie at the end of the day. I thought it has a great visual look to it. Most of the cast is pretty good. It has a really good story with a great mystery. It's very well paced and I'm never bored. But there are definitely a lot of things in this movie that keep it from being a masterpiece. It had the potential to be one, and for that, I'm gonna say this movie's good, but it's not great. After seeing the theatrical cut for the first time in 12 years, I'm willing to give the alternate cuts a shot because, hey, maybe those could be better. Maybe those alternate cuts will expand the story more. But right now, it's not really at the top of my watch list in terms of movies or versions of movies I want to see. But this theatrical cut right here, I actually was surprised that I liked it, considering that when I first saw it 12 years ago, I thought it was just okay. And there you go, that's my review for Zack Snyder's Watchmen. For anyone who wants to claim that I hate Zack Snyder's movies, I like this one, so you could put that lie to rest. So now next week we're going to move into the actual DC Extended Universe, and much like with my Jaws and Jaws 2 video last year, next week is going to be a two-parter with the 1-2 punch of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. This will be the first time I've revisited Man of Steel since it came out on Blu-ray, so while I'm willing to give Man of Steel another chance, with Batman vs Superman, this might be a rough one for those of you who are fans of this movie. But until we get to next week, I want to hear what you guys think about Watchmen. If you've seen it, what did you think? Which cut of Watchmen is your favorite, if you've seen any of the alternate cuts? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for Watchmen. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share me with your friends. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go check out my Twitch channel and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.